Guys, the next time we look at another sky, it's going to be over another town. Or the next time we take a test, it's going to be in some other school. Our parents, they try to do the best stuff for us up there. It's their time up there. But down here, it's our time down here. That all ends the second we get in Troy's bucket.
John, you Goonie!
All right, welcome to episode 4 with Redhead Family Therapy Guy.
And the mic.
Yeah, dude. We're doing this again.
Exciting.
People keep listening.
So much fun.
I mean, our viewership and listenership is like...
I know, through the roof. Can't even count that high.
I didn't even know it was going to happen.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's amazing.
So we're coming to you today from the Nashville studio.
Yes.
And as you can see, we've got One-Eyed Willie with us.
Yep. No Chester
If you
Copperpot.
can't see us,
Copperpot?
I can only hear how Data says it. So I say it wrong
Coppertot.
in my head. Copperpot.
Copperpot.
Chester Copperpot. We're saying it wrong, I'm sure.
We left him in
So
the cave.
if you're just listening, we've got quite a setup. We've got One-Eyed Willie in skeleton form with his booty.
We do. Lots of treasures.
Lots of treasures. So
it's amazing.
It's pretty fantastic and amazing and magical.
It is.
So yeah, you excited to talk about Goonies today? Oh my gosh.
I am excited. I think just in watching Goonies again, seen it many times, but in watching it again, I was amazed by the music. I feel like music in 80s movies is just so good.
Well,
why is that? Why does it feel better than now?
I think that era of music is just
fun.
Come on, it's so good. I mean, the synthesizer music and the keyboards, that was like the explosion of the keyboards after the rock era. And it's just, yeah, dude, it's fantastic. I wish we could actually play like Cyndi Lauper's like, good enough.
Once she becomes a fan, we'll get approval.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, it's true. Like the sound and the music, it's so timeless and so classic. And I suppose nostalgic for us because it's like our childhood. But
So something funny, we were watching this last night, and John's son walks by, and how old is he? 12? 13.
yeah.
13 now.
Almost, yeah. 13.
So Jack walks by. And he's like, oh, so nostalgic. And I'm sitting here thinking,
You're 13.
Wow, what is he talking about? And then right afterwards, he says, something like, it makes me miss Emmanuel.
Aw.
And isn't that amazing
Yeah.
how a movie that he didn't, like, it's not from his era. I mean, he's
we
13
watched
years old.
Yeah, but we watched it. I mean, because
But even now, it creates nostalgia for a 13-year-old. That's impressive.
It is
That's
impressive.
really cool. And just the comment just meant a lot to me because I thought, it reminds him of his brother. And I think he's missing his brother because his brother's not here right now.
Yeah, his brother is on a mission for our church, and so he's been away for almost 3 months, 2.5, 3 months, something like that.
Which is a long time for a 13-year-old.
Yeah, and this definitely was a show that, like, we watched. It was a show we loved from our childhood, and of course, tons of our friends were like, "That movie's horribly inappropriate," and I'm like, I watched it when I was a kid, so I don't remember that.
I watched
that
a lot
aspect.
of shows when I was a kid.
Well, all the 80s
now I'm
movies,
like, whoa.
all the 80s movies were like horribly inappropriate. So it's hard to kind of, but yeah. So it is a timeless show. So what do you think it is about Goonies that makes it so timeless and so nostalgic, or just, I mean, it just oozes that.
One thing I think is with the example of your son. It's nostalgic to him because it reminds him of a feeling, a bond, a connection with his brother that becomes real in that moment, right? He feels it, he desires it, he misses it. And I think with Goonies, you get a portrayal of so many different archetypes, like so many different characters. You have the brothers, you have the older, a nerd, you have a jock, you have the goofy kid, you have the heavy kid, you have all these different characters.
Look at you being all appropriate. The heavy kid. Chunk. It's funny. I was looking at articles, and he like talked about how like I don't know the right word to say, not like abusive or stressful, but like, he was a chunky kid and they make him do like, the truffle shuffle or
the
whatever.
Truffle shuffle. They make a ton of comments, and he's eating ice cream and
right. Yeah, I was like, yeah, and like he's like, I'm depressed, and he's like, squirting. Oh, what the heck?
I don't remember what it was. I remember
whipped
the baby
cream
Ruth.
into his mouth.
Cream.
You know what I mean? And so it's just like, yeah, I'm depressed, and he's like, binging on food or whatever. And so, but I mean, as a kid, like there was nothing that was like hateful about that. It was just funny.
And that's what was funny to me is all throughout the movie, they're all poking at each other.
Yeah, that's what I remember from my friendship groups. Like when we would get a group together, which our time and era, in the 80s, like that's exactly what we did. Like we went out, like when I was in my 13th year or 11th year or 14th year, like we totally were on our bikes, like around the neighborhood, like exploring and in the woods and like building forts and running around and constantly making fun of each other and bantering. And I mean, it was brutal, but it was also just like, I was just like being a kid, It wasn't like
going out and I remember waking up.
Fun.
I'd wake up at like 5 every morning, something crazy before my parents, and I'd go out, and want to go play with my friends, and half of them weren't even awake. So I'd just be walking around. But
you're anxious and eager.
You'd be out, right? And then I wouldn't come back in until whenever I was hungry, I guess. But if I could make it until nighttime, you just stay out all day.
Yeah, it was great. So that movie just captures that whole thing. It captures the banter, it captures the adventure. Like watching it as an adult, even like it's like how ridiculous. Like you're gonna go find a treasure, like right. But
even the whole we were joking about this last night. Like the whole thing, One-Eyed Willie was really quite the engineer.
That piano.
Impressingly, yes, he designed a slide. Well, I guess the slide was supposed to be natural, but
yeah, what 4,000 not 4,000, 400 years later,
1600s.
Yeah,
this was all built.
The piano, the air piano, like I don't know, it's
like the ball, the bowl. It wasn't a bowling ball, I don't think, but the ball goes down that course. It was like a full on.
Yeah, like cannonball.
Yeah, the cannonball. That's right.
Like the metal tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just have to suspend, right? That's what you have to do. But yeah, the engineering of One-Eyed Willie.
I didn't see any other skeletons on the boat. So I'm
the whole
guessing...
table, around the table.
Was
his whole
there?
crew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. His whole One-Eyed Willie.
So it wasn't just
crew.
One-Eyed Willie. He had help.
No, yeah, I guess he murdered them or they all died after.
They all died with their treasures,
with their booty,
which is kind of the essence of the movie, right? To some degree, what we love, I think, makes it timeless is this whole idea that the real treasure is not treasure, right?
Yeah,
it's something more than that.
Right. That's the whole arc of the story, right? You've got the beginning, you've got the threat. You've got the real villains.
Yeah,
the real villains is the foo-fooey, rich people that are going to turn their town or this part of their town into a golf course or a country club. Or
so
whatever.
Funny because there's the dad, right? That like right off the bat, he's like, he's the guy that's going to take away everything, right? Take away your
one
happiness.
That shows up with the contract with the lawyers.
And then who's his son? His son
Troy.
is the
Troy.
kid that's a jerk, right? He's the one that has enough hand strength to hold on to Bran
to Thanos.
To Thanos while he's driving and keep him stuck there, pulling him along 45 miles per hour.
yeah, you're not gonna hold Thanos down with just a little paw grip on your Mustang.
Well, and any of you cyclists out there know 45 miles per hour on a small bike like that you can't just cruise is not happening.
I know, right?
But it is Thanos, so I guess there's exceptions
possible.
to.
Well, we can't just keep dismissing the wonder of the nostalgia of the movie. Movie magic. That's what we're all about. So yeah, I think so. What else makes it timeless for you? What else do you think are the aspects that make that movie just so classic?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that doesn't love that movie from our era.
Definitely the music, but I think just the whole feel of I love board games, I love role playing games, I love video games, and it's kind of that essence of the journey, the adventure together, right?
Well, and there's like legit danger, right? With the Fratellis, is that how you say their name?
Fratellis or Fratellis.
The mob family.
And as an adult, I get that through board games because it's much safer than going and potentially being killed by some
real monster.
Yeah. Some crazy adventure. But I think that's what it makes it timeless for me, is just it is this reminder of adventure.
Yeah.
And it reminds me to times that I had, like you said, times that as a kid that I had fun with my friend group, even though we weren't,
searching for One-Eyed Willie's treasure. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. I think just that sense of adventure, that sense of like, well, and it's on the cusp of possible loss, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're like losing their home to these villainous yuppies, you know what I mean, that are going to turn their home.
Well, and they make it seem like potentially even they'll be distant. I don't know if it's ever made clear that they're like moving out of the town or something, but they make it seem like a friendship is
Data
almost.
says something about Detroit. Because he's like, have you ever heard of Detroit? And they're like, oh, it's like the crime capital. Somebody says like crime capital of the world. And so I think like there's this notion that they're all moving away.
Wow.
As a part of it. And so, there's that sense of loss, and there's this sense of like, we want to do something as Goonies together one last time. But the characters, and it's funny too, because I totally remember my friend group like having some of these characters,
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the guy that was kind of the sports guy, or, the kid that was really smart. I don't think I had a gadgety friend quite like Data.
Well, and it's interesting. I feel like, that's true oftentimes growing up. And then as you get older, maybe some of that is lost. Maybe there's not as much diversity.
Or maybe people don't stay in those kind of like cliche, character types, right?
Mm-hmm.
We become a little bit more dynamic as individuals.
We also get busier when we get older. I think other things occupy our time. We don't have as much time to develop or to devote to friendship.
Right.
And maybe that's a concern.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the other aspects is just that sense of like, it's a movie of adventure. And I think the other thing that really, it's funny because now watching as an adult, the jokes are hammy and, I guess don't hold up in our woke culture. But the thing I remember loving about it as a kid is like all of those like just ridiculously stupid jokes. Like I thought were the funniest thing in the world. Like I just really thought it was hilarious. Like Mouth going around and like mistranslating everything. I thought was hilarious. Like, you know what I mean? And the statue and its broken genitalia.
The statue part is really, really funny. It's my mom's favorite part. And then he's trying to put it on
backwards. He's like, man, like that would help me.
It's classic.
Crude, yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so.
But funny. Mouth translating. Basically, it's a drug lord house, right? He's translating to this lady, and she's like, and then she comes back later, and Brand is tied up, right? He's tied up, laying down because the boys had all left on their adventure,
which is also hilarious. Like you're gonna tie up Thanos with the arm stretchies.
The accordion arm band workout
it's just thing. So fantastic. It's just so great. And like that the introduction scene with the Fratellis. I mean, they're just like so just bad. I mean, oh my goodness, that's so funny. So I think the sense of adventure, the sense of danger, the sense of quest, the camaraderie, and what's really cool is how the characters really, develop, mm-hmm. right? And you mentioned that idea of treasure, right? And it's like, that's one of the things about stories. And, when you're the hero of the story, whatever difficult task you courageously go into, you come away with knowledge, right? That's the real treasure is the confidence you gain, the competence you gain. And that's really why we have to kind of dive into hard things in our lives so that we can, that we can mine those things from the experiences that we go through that challenge us. And friendships are an essential part of managing and getting through those difficult things. We need supports in the journey, right?
Well, and for me, I think that's the true treasure for me is, and we talked about this last night at the end, and this always drove me nuts. You said it drove you nuts too. There's this ship full of treasure just floating away.
It's so.
I would be like swimming after it or something.
As a kid, it made me crazy. Yes. I was like, "Are you kidding me? One bag of jewels, and you've got a ship that's like sailing off into the sunset." It was so bizarre. Yeah. And of course, it really clicked for me last night. I was like, "Oh, like it's not what it's about."
Well, and I think that's for me what it is it's about the connection that's developed through friendship and through family. Like that's all that is at the end. And the thought that comes to my mind is they have this whole journey. They have this whole process. There's growth that happens.
And also during the journey, each of them kind of contribute in one way or another. Data and his like slippery shoes, or the girl, I'm forgetting her name. Hold on. With her piano skills.
I can't remember her name.
Yeah, I pulled it up. But yeah, so they all contribute in some way.
And I think that's, you see this growth.
Andy is the girl that plays the piano.
You see this growth, but I think for me, we deal with hard things in life. Mm-hmm. We all deal with hard things in life. I think for me, the thought that comes to mind is to deal with hard things in life, is doable, but to deal with them alone is torture.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's awful.
And so that's kind of the thought. That's what comes to me. The treasure in this is, hey, it's easier, it's more attainable when we have others with us.
Yeah.
When we have connection. Yes.
Like the success or
life. And I think that's what it symbolizes for me is life's journey. And we can do it together or we can do it alone. And I'm not saying the money symbolizes aloneness, but that's kind of what the theme was, is that One-Eyed Willie died alone with his treasure. Well, he had his crew there.
Well, or he cut their throats because he wanted it, because he was resentful. And
honestly, that's what I think torture does to us, right? It creates an emotional state where we have a hard time coping and dealing with things in a way that we would see from an outside perspective as maybe more rational way to deal with things. And I think that's what I take from it is friendship allows me to not experience torture through life and to deal with hard things in a way that I can continue to move forward, because we're going to experience those things no matter what.
What you're suggesting is that you have friends.
I think I have one.
Maybe.
But when I'm struggling, that's where I go. I don't want to be alone. I go to Heather. Yeah. I've talked to you many times, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll call my other, I have a few friends that I feel close with that I'll go to. And it's through that. I remember when I was young, my father passed away when I was young, and before that I was out of the house. And so I think I was 17 when I was out of the house.
Wow.
And living on my own. And I remember thinking kind of this loss of I'm not really accepted at home. And so I've got to find somewhere else. And so I remember my mom helping me find somewhere to live, just not home. But she helped me find somewhere to live. But I remember kind of this loss and thinking, oh my goodness, this is so scary, until I mentioned it to a friend.
And he's
a good friend. And he was a year older than me. So I had to have been 17. He was 18. So he legally could, because I couldn't even get a lease.
Right.
And I mentioned it to him, and his response was,
"That's so awesome.
I'll move with you."
Oh, wow.
And it was like a huge burden was lifted.
Interesting. So once you knew that
scary thing became
an
not
adventure.
So scary.
Well, it became
It
became an adventure.
It became a blessing in my life.
Sure.
Where going into it, I was like, holy crap, I don't know if my family wants me anymore, right? And of course they do. I know my family loves me.
Sure. Yeah.
But in that moment, as a young kid, thinking, oh my goodness, do I have a place somewhere? Yeah. And then that connection made that torture no longer torture.
Right. That's fantastic.
It was still hard, but it wasn't torture.
That's a fantastic reframe. And it really did hit me last night, that this whole notion of what the treasure is was, the bonds that they cultivated or had through the adventure, through the danger, facing off against the uncertainty of where they were going, and the Fratellis on their tail. And so yeah, it really hit me in that final scene when they're all connecting with their family groups. I always remember as a kid really loving that part and thinking it was hilarious. And interesting how they represented the kids from like their parents, right? They like played into those types
cool.
or whatever, those character types or whatever. And then of course, Chunk saying that he's going to take in Sloth.
Yep.
Yeah. It was just like, I thought to myself as an adult, like that's a big pet to bring home.
It's a grown man, a huge grown man,
a large man that you're bringing home. You're gonna come live with me, Sloth. Oh, Chunk. Hey, you guys. That's the best.
as he's one-handed with Chunk on his back,
of course,
sliding down the sail with a knife.
Of course. I mean, no problem. I mean, it's just, and so it was just really sweet for that kind of crystallization to come of that's right. Like through our adventures, the real treasure are the relationships that we gain and that really get us through. So when you're working with clients, is that a big thought in your mind? I mean, do you think a lot about your client support system?
Yeah, kind of like systems theory type of approach. Yeah, I think that's always on my mind is where is the support, where is the connection coming from? Are they on their own? So especially when they call in or if I have someone even making a referral, I want as much information as possible. And so that's one of the first questions I'll ask is, what's their home status? Like, who do they live with? Are they living by themselves or with others?
Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, there's a huge theme. I mean, for sure, I've done a lot of, I worked before our current agency, I worked at an agency or two different agencies that were at addiction. One was intensive outpatient, and one was a residential. And it's really fascinating how, particularly with addicts or those struggling with addiction, do not have friends. I mean, do not have friends.
The support
at all.
system,
don't. I'll be like, is there anybody that you're talking with or connect with or things that you go and do with, and more often than not, definitely over 50% of the time, those that are really struggling emotionally do not have connections.
Well, and you look at compulsive behaviors in general, and you see feelings of isolation, feelings of self-hatred, actions of hiding. Those are all stages that lead into the behavior itself. And so, I mean, if you're struggling with friendship, struggling really with connection, right? Because you can have friends but not connect on a deeper level.
Yeah, for sure.
And
people just hang out with,
and struggling
but don't
with that,
ever.
It's going to lead in. I mean, you because you're in. I mean, it's torture. You want soothing.
Right.
And so you're seeking, your mind and body's going to seek it out.
Seek something out, right?
Yeah.
That dopamine bump somewhere, and which is what the compulsive behavior comes about instead of the antithesis or the opposite. Because I really see addiction as a problem with relationships.
Yeah. Definitely. That's
addiction is the mental health struggle of relational isolation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not being able to negotiate, because it's like in that moment of distress, do I call someone and connect, which is when individuals get into recovery, is particularly with 12-step recovery, you have sponsors, you have supports. And so when you're in those moments of distress, you call, you reach out. And in that moment, you have the greatest opportunity to get support and encouragement. And the trigger then subsides, and then the need for the acting out is kind of mitigated, or at least you're supported instead of falling back into that cycle of acting out.
I think that's what, when we look at step one, honesty, I think that's what honesty is it's maybe a better word would be openness. Right. It's finding a way to open up so that you can start connecting. And it goes back to what we talked about before in our last podcast, vulnerability, right? Having that vulnerability, which breeds connection. And so, I think that definitely family support, friendship, connection is definitely a key part of.
So what do you think are the characteristics or aspects? I found this article I did, just looking at friendships, and what do you think of as the true aspects of a solid friendship, of a true friend? What would you say are some of the dimensions or parts of?
Definitely, if it's a male friend, he has to be really strong, tall, have a, kind of a warped face. And if he doesn't love food, especially Baby Ruth, then yeah, it's been a struggle, you and I, at times, because you're not
have
the biggest
crooked
of
eyes.
guys. You're in
I
shape.
cannot drag you off of the battlefield,
which is sad, because I don't know that there are many people in this world that can. And
do my best.
I would really enjoy that. What do I look for? I think that something,
or dimensions of just what
I think something interesting. We've spoken about this before. I think you and I both, we enjoy connection, right? We enjoy finding, learning about people, understanding, kind of what do you like? And I find things interesting. I think for me with friendship, maybe a little bit of reciprocity, a little bit of that back. So I ask a lot of questions when
when you're interested in something, you're a questioner.
Yeah, I like to ask a lot of questions, especially with people. I think that's what kind of naturally gravitated me towards therapy, is I will just ask a lot of questions. I am interested, like genuinely, I want to know. But I think for me to have a little bit of that back, and I think that that's maybe not natural for everyone to
be really inquisitive.
Yes.
Yeah, I think people in general are more guarded.
I think they feel intrusive at times. And
I mean, it's fine to say, how are you doing? What's going on? But, people don't in general probe much more, right, than that, which I think, folks that find me as a friend, sorry. I think there's an intensity, because of the level that I want my connections and friendships to be at, and it's interesting too, as us as therapists, when you go to the level of emotional connection that we do in our work, it's just kind of natural in my friendships. I want to have deeper connections than those that I experience, with my clients. And so, there is an intensity, maybe for us therapists, or I'm sure there's plenty of therapists out there that are guarded or whatever.
Well, I think some oftentimes you look for acceptance, right?
Right.
And so for me, as a therapist, I think we deal with so much, right? So many different things day in, day out. I think my sense of humor might not be the norm. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'll joke about things, or I oftentimes will just be sarcastic, and I'll just be straight faced, and I think that people think I'm just mean.
You're strange. Or mean.
And so I think acceptance of my sense of humor is appealing to me too. Right. Especially if someone gives it back, I'll chuckle because it's funny to me. Right. And I don't do that necessarily in session, right?
Sure.
But maybe I shouldn't do it out of session too. Maybe I should be more kind at times. I'm not trying to be rude. It's just my sense of humor. So acceptance is another piece for me when I'm seeking, a thought I have, or a question I have, is how do you begin to really develop friendship?
Well, I think that's a hard thing. It is a really hard thing, because a good friendship doesn't typically happen super quick, right? Like, you get to know somebody a little bit, you experiment with asking if they want to do something, or hopefully they, or somebody inquires if do you want to go do this or whatever. And then you do that once or twice, and, it takes a while. And so like when you're in a new place or whatever, and I think one of the things that I've noticed, because I've got good friends in different places, we've lived a lot of different places. One of the things I've really realized is I love the people that I've been really close that are far away, but proximity really makes, a big difference on how much, because if somebody's not, even with social media, you can Marco Polo a lot, you can message a lot more, they can see what you're doing on social media, but like if you don't have proximity, then like you can't go get lunch, you can't in a pinch call them to get you over to the house if you really need something. And so I think proximity is a huge aspect.
And I think that is a concern. I feel that people move around a lot more now, and maybe that's not true. Maybe that's always been the case, but it feels like people move around a lot more as I've gotten older than when I was younger. And so the ability to develop new friendships, I find, can be difficult, especially when you're in a new area. If you don't have connections there, how do you begin to develop? Especially if friendship building is maybe not natural. It's a hard
well,
thing to do.
I mean, it takes vulnerability, right? Because I mean, an aspect of what a real friend is like I can really be myself. Like I'm, we're not so woke or so thin-skinned that I can't be colorful or in a bad mood, and a good friend can give you the benefit of the doubt, or they know you well enough to know you don't mean that in a mean-spirited way, and so I think that sense of authenticity and that sense that I'm known. What do you think it is about friendships that are different than family relationships? Or because a lot of times, like, I mean, I'm close with members of my family, decently close with some of the members of my family, but like friendships are like important. What do you think it's different, or what do you think it is that's different about friendships than family relationships that make them meaningful or important?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things. One thing is expectation that maybe we place on ourselves, or that we feel is placed on us from
family.
Yeah, so I think of family. I think maybe there are times where, like with my mom, or my dad, or my sister, probably not so much my sister, but my parents, right? Feeling, well, I want to be something so that they're proud of me, right? And so there's that weight, that expectation, where with a friend, maybe I don't feel that as much. I don't. It could depend on a friend.
I don't.
But yeah, I don't. So I feel like that to me allows me to maybe say or do things that maybe are harder. And that can be vice versa, right? If I have a really good relationship with a family member, maybe it's easier for me to be open with them than it would a friend. But I think that expectation role, depending on how I frame that relationship in my mind and the expectations I place on it, definitely can make it hard.
Yeah, I guess like friendships are voluntary, right? Like, I mean, you choose your friend. And so the notion that there is a built-in expectation of love or service or showing up or calling or whatever is different, right? I mean, friendships.
It's a good point.
I mean, as you cultivate a friendship, I mean, I might count on the fact that you're going to be fun, or that you're going to be understanding, but it's not the same type of weight or expectation that you have with family members. And I think that that's the notion of you choose, right? And I think also too, friendships, I mean, one of the things that I've seen in the friendships I've cultivated is that there's usually you have to share something, right? Like, family, you might not necessarily share an interest of a family member. And so if you don't share something, if you don't share an activity or a love of something, and definitely of my 6 kids, the ones that I've, cultivated bonds with, it's because we've done something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my 2 daughters, I've become quite close with, because I'm a huge hockey fan, and they have become hockey fans as well. And so they'll text me stories, or they'll send out pictures, or we try to make time to sit and watch a game together or whatever.
Well, even soccer now too.
Right. Well, Sarah, I've been doing soccer. Yeah, we've started getting into following the Nashville football club. So yeah, I think that's a really huge aspect of friendship as well.
I have a question for you, kind of going off of this theme. Why do you think there are times with a spouse where maybe the spouse struggles to say something to their spouse, but instead goes to a friend, which of course creates a trauma, right, for that spouse?
I mean, it depends.
It creates a hurt maybe. But what do you think contributes to that at times, where a spouse maybe doesn't go to their spouse, but feels more comfortable going to a friend and talking to a friend?
Well, I think, you've got that idea of like voluntary versus expectation, right? Like, I mean, a spouse, there's a history of what the conflict could be around, like if it's the use of money, or a spouse expects you to do something and you haven't done it, or you failed to do something, the spouse is going to be upset about it. So I think it's that notion of expectation versus, friend expectations tend to be fair, even with really close friends, tend to be pretty low, right?
So let me ask you this. I think, excuse me, I think ideally with a spouse, at least for me, I think of, I want that relationship to be both.
Oh, absolutely, right.
Is that possible?
I think so. Well, I can only speak to I've been a therapist for, a long time and seen a lot of different couples. But I think, in my marriage, my wife and I feel like and we say this all the time, that that we feel like we're best friends. I mean, I love my friends, and I have a decent friend group that I go and do stuff with, and Nick's very supportive of that, and I'm very supportive. I mean, she's actually gone this weekend and hanging out with two girls in East Tennessee, and so yeah, I think I think it absolutely is possible. I love being with Nick. Yeah. We are friends, and I think that Sternberg's triangle of love, to have a complete spousal relationship, having passion, having friendship, having commitment, and I would add, I think essential part of a great marriage is the commitment to sacrifice for the other person. So I think friendship is an aspect that's really important. But again, couples have to make a point, I think, to have shared activity. Sure. You know what I mean? Things that that engender that aspect of friendship that's fun, things that you talk about. And it's hard, right? Because especially, you get caught in raising kids, which is why divorce rates go up in the 17 to 24 years of marriage. There's divorce rates go up at that time because the kids start to go, and it's like, well, what do we have? We've been collaborating and being partners with parenting, but what else do we have, right? So I think it's something you have to be very deliberate in your marriage relationship to cultivate friendship.
Well, you see that even early on too, right? Yeah. Where we're right after a child is born, and there's that period where kind of role is uncertain at that point. Yeah. It's like, okay, I feel like all of my time is I'm at work, or I'm a mom, I'm
somebody's
a dad,
got to keep the kid
I'm a
alive.
Caretaker. Yeah. And so where is the time and the space to foster the friendship?
Yeah. Which I think Nick and I absolutely deliberately did. We absolutely made time.
That's one thing that's tough is I don't know that, I have a lot of clients come in. I don't know that they know to be aware of that, right?
Yeah.
That the understanding that, hey, and I think they think they're not in love, but maybe it's not an issue of that. It's just relearning how to have that friendship together.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes that's one of the staple things I'll say to couples is like, you got to go on date night. I mean, that was a game changer for Nick and I for sure. Like when our oldest was old enough, about 11, we started going, around the corner to, the restaurant that was 2 blocks away from our house at the time. That when Friday night became our date night, and we might go out. I mean, we oftentimes go out with other couples. That was huge because it was like, oh, there is this aspect that we reclaimed that's just our time as a couple.
What ideas do you have to foster that friendship before 11 years, right? I mean, 11 years, once you have that built-in babysitter, it's awesome.
It's awesome.
But what types of things do you do prior to that?
Well, I mean, you've got to be deliberate about it, right? I mean, this is the thing that's really key. But I mean, having games, like, I mean, when we were early in our marriage, we were so poor. We couldn't even like rent a video. So we would, we would like play card games, or, we had some different games that we played. I think, I mean,
so having
with
variety,
us,
right? Different things.
Yeah, I mean, with us, I mean, our faith and the fact that we're, committed to our faith, that's something we talk a lot about, and we spend time and make sacrifices and serve in church. And so those are something we share. I think it's about having, sorry.
Do you see a difference? So I think I love games as an option.
Yeah.
I might be biased because I just love games, but I have a lot of couples that will, their go-to is like a TV show or a movie.
That's fine.
Is there a difference when it comes to connection between watching a TV show together and playing a game together?
Well, I mean, if you just sit next to each other, I mean, unless you dialogue. I mean, Nick and I think at times will dialogue about shows and why we like them or whatever. And I think it's because, I like to look for symbolism or big picture ideas. And so I'll talk about that after I watch a show. And so it'll create some aspect of dialogue, So I think, it's something. It's better than nothing, right? Like having a show we watch together, it's our show. But yeah, I mean,
so identifying it as that,
yeah, right, yeah.
Identifying that.
Well,
as,
we've
hey,
had
we
some
watch
arguments
this together. You don't watch it without me.
We've
right?
had some arguments when there's been betrayal, where someone will be away for a couple days, and it was like
there's been a trauma.
Yeah, it's like
you
a new
broke
show.
that trust, right?
How dare you? I'm trying to remember what shows it was. It's happened a couple times. We're like, no, we're watching this together. My wife will get frustrated because I have a thing where she loves to binge watch, and I don't mind binge watching, but I kind of have to be in the mood. Like when we got into watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, she got frustrated with me because it would be like, yeah, let's watch like 2, because they're 20-minute episodes,
Yeah,
and she'd want to watch like 5. I'd be like, all right, I'm done. We watched 2, and she'd be like, let's watch another one. I'd be like,
what
I just kind of got
think
bored.
that means to her though? Yeah, I wonder if sometimes when we hear things, for you, it's just like I want to be with you, but doing that is hard for me.
Right.
But I wonder what that means to her. Like, what does her mind make of that? Oh, he doesn't want to spend time with me.
No,
and it has nothing to do with that, right?
I mean, I suppose. I mean, not. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not
Nick's
trying, Nick. I'm not trying to do anything here. I'm just throwing out some.
Well, I mean, in couples,
but I think
that's a part
happens
of the
with us a lot,
negotiation,
yeah.
right? I mean, I think that's a part of being a couple, and I think that's why it's so important in a marriage that you absolutely need to be deliberately, cultivating something. I mean, TV shows can be one thing, games can be another thing, but you need to be doing something. Or, an aspect of, I think, what helped in our marriage, Nick got serious about exercise somewhere about 7 or 8 years or something like that. We were starting to get plumper or lazier or whatever, and it was like we didn't want to buy bigger clothes, and so she started running, and I had like no desire to run at the time, and so I got but she set a goal to run a marathon, and so I was very much involved in attending and being there and encouraging her to buy sneakers and going with her and listening to her talk about her training, and so being that support was being a friend in that way, and there were sacrifices I absolutely had to make so that she could train and do stuff. And then there were, I picked up cycling and likewise, you know what I mean? There were sacrifices, monetary sacrifices, time sacrifices. And so I think that's a way to cultivate as well when you're supporting the thing that the person loves or wants to do. Is an aspect,
and that goes
as well.
Just not just a spousal relationship, a partner relationship. That goes into friendship with relationships altogether, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I just watched one of my friends on YouTube, or not YouTube, sorry, Facebook this morning. One of a guy shared a story of his friend doing I think it was his 15th Ironman in Hawaii. And that's what he shared. Like his favorite memory was being there. I mean, the whole friend group flew to Hawaii and we're celebrating him participating in his 15th Ironman. And the Hawaii one's a big one if you're an Ironman person. And so, yeah, I mean, it's on display, right?
Yep.
This solid friend group of things that they had done together. And just being there to support that, his friend is just so cool. So I think that, yeah, absolutely, that's part of it as well.
Do you ever use the Gottman love cards?
Oh no!
So there's an app. I'm not sure if they're called love cards or, I can't remember. I've always called them the Gottman love cards, but there's an app that you can just do for free.
Cool.
So it's a free option, or you can purchase. I think they still have them, but there's different categories, and they're just questions. They're just fun, kind of. Some are cheesy, some are corny, some are just real, but they're questions, and I find it
questions for couples.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, even some of them you can just use in friendships.
Yeah.
But I find it so helpful with a couple to say, hey, just get the cards and just ask each other questions.
I had a document and that I would give couples that had like 3 sets of questions. One was kind of surface level, one was medium, and then one was like deeper questions. And I think they also facilitated an expression of positive regard to each other as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, just doing that. My wife and I did a getaway a couple weeks ago, and I had come up with a series of questions that I was like, hey, I came up with some questions. And we did that in the car, and it really cultivated a sense of connection.
So I think that's what kind of comes back to how do you develop friendship? It's this sense of curiosity, and that's what I think attracts us to our partner in the beginning too, right? That's what creates kind of that honeymoon state.
Well, we're also putting on our best self,
excitement. Right? Well, of course, but I think that's a similarity between a friendship and maybe a romantic relationship is this curiosity, and does that curiosity die?
Well, it can. I mean, that's why I keep using the word. I've said it probably 10 times now, being deliberate. I mean, like you really have to. You can't. Otherwise, you're really taking marriage for granted. I mean, it's some
Can
of those.
you revive it?
Oh, sure,
So
absolutely.
the curiosity never really dies, right? It just diminishes, and we need to revive it with
Yeah, I
our
think so.
friendships and with
I think so.
our relationships.
Yeah, and it can just be tough because, like,
intimate
life's
relationships.
busy and it's like it takes emotional work. And it's like, well, you just love me. I can just be myself, which is true. But, there has to be aspects of novelty.
So there's like a sense of complacency, right? We kind of we get a little complacent because we feel that we're safe,
right.
and
that's an essential part of friendship and
is.
marriage and
but
family.
Then the safety can also, it doesn't always, but it can really hurt the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the strain or the push and pull between, order and chaos, right? Like if life is too ordered, too predictable, too safe, it gets stale. It gets to feel like a rut. It gets boring.
Where do you get the balance? Because in Goonies, obviously, they have some type of balance because they poke, they pick, they experience hard things, but they're still friends. Yeah. So how do you get the balance?
Well, that's part of the trust, right? I mean, the trust has to be there enough that, like, I can poke you and I'm not trying to hurt you, right? It's like I can be honest and poke fun at you. And there's enough trust here that you can kind of take it.
So I need to know the you, right? And I'm not really going to know that unless there's curiosity,
right?
To start, right? So so they must know the yous, right? They must know each other enough to know, hey, this poke is love. And teasing, it's not real criticism.
Well, and that's one of the things that's really complicated in those teen years, right? Where, friendships you don't know. And, the whole age group's not emotionally mature.
Yes.
Right? And so that's one of the things that's really difficult about negotiating, friendships through your 12th year into your teen year. And it changes so much too, right?
I think 75% of the population that I work with is 18 to 22. And so almost all of what I work with is right in that young adult age range. And I feel like a lot of that is a lot of insecurity, uncertainty. How do I connect? How do I foster a relationship? Am I being rude? Do they think I'm mean? Kind of all these questions. And so I think,
well, and you're still figuring yourself out. You know what I mean? Like, you don't.
I'm still figuring myself out.
Right, but you really don't. Right,
yeah,
that's
really
true. I don't know. I haven't figured you out. But so one of the things I came across too, in kind of looking at friendships, it talked about the benefits of health that come from friendships.
Yeah, what'd you find?
So this is a really cool list, and it's definitely true. Like, one is, there's a sense of connectedness, a sense of acceptance, of unconditional positive regard. It protects you, or it's a resilience factor against loneliness or isolation, right? Sure. That's the thing that friendships really offer. But one of the huge things is it references the notion of communication, right? Especially to different friendships, maybe you have a more smarmy, intelligent person or somebody that knows things that you don't, that you can be challenged by that instead of intimidated by that. Sure. That can pull you and challenge you to grow or expand your vocabulary or learn something that you were afraid to learn. And I think that's a great aspect of friendship it's one of the things I really enjoy about friendship is when it really pushes me to develop something that I don't have. Yeah. I like that. I personally love that. I love it when, a friend that I have is way better at me than something, and I can kind of learn from them or be challenged to kind of cultivate and develop something, which is one of the other major factors that listens here, that friends challenge you to develop new skills. Which is why it's so great to have friendships that like where we've gone for big bike rides. I mean, that wasn't something you were working on. You weren't planning on, biking across states.
No.
And I was like, hey man, I want to do this. You want to do it? And you're like, sure, let's do it.
But for me, the bike ride is cool, but to spend 4 days with a buddy, right, with a friend, and just the journey, and we could even do a podcast just on the crazy stuff that happened in that 4 days. But it's so fun, right? It's so fun, and there was extreme pain in that bike ride. And I speak to this at one of the trainings I did earlier this year for our work. I speak to, I was able to build resilience through that pain because I wasn't alone.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That connection was so important. Yeah. How could I have kept going? I mean, we were like 40 miles into a 100-mile a day, and my knee went out.
Are you talking about day 4? Yeah,
it was. Well, day 3 was the bad one. Day 4 was bad too. But I don't think I could have made it if I was alone. I mean, I hope I could have enough resilience. In the towel. But I mean, it's through you being there and being understanding, because I felt guilty. I kept saying, "Man, I'm so sorry. Just go faster." But you were there with me, and that helped me through. Right? Yeah. Friendship is really what it's about. Like doing the bike ride is cool. I love riding. I love being outside. Mm-hmm. But really, I mean, our first day being outside didn't matter. It was all about friendship. Our first day.
So day one, it's gonna thunderstorm 100% for 5 hours. So should we ride?
It's 10 o'clock at night, and so we're like, okay, so we go.
That was your idea.
And
you're like,
ride all night.
You're like, hey, maybe we should just go tonight.
We've got to do an episode on the ride. We'll do a fun one. We'll just do a fun one. It'll be a bonus episode or something.
People want to listen. That should be our bonus. We should do. Are we gonna do Alabama?
We should. We need to figure out how. We have a work training next month
in Alabama. Do you feel up to it?
And we need to figure. I'll have to see how.
You better start riding, bro. You haven't been on the bike. I haven't been on it as much either. I've been a little lazy.
My neck has been giving me trouble. But anyways, all this stuff.
So friendships offer, they reduce stress because you have that connection and loneliness. The idea of cultivating and sharing ideas.
Well, and I believe, isn't there research, you look at the research into oxytocin being released through connection and healing. And is it cortisol? Is that the one that's
not an expert
released?
on
I think that's the one that is the stress hormone or whatever. I could be wrong. If there's someone that knows, just tell us and correct us.
Send us a paper.
But that stress, right? That stress can be reduced so much through oxytocin releasing. And it happens through connection. Connection really is so important.
It's really interesting how magical, like just having a conversation with somebody that will be empathetic and gets you. And you can laugh a little bit or vent. It's really
therein lies the power of a therapist. Yeah. It's really, for me, yes, we've had schooling and we understand different modalities, but the real growth comes when I can connect with that person and they feel like they're not alone in the pain. Yeah. They feel like I'm there with them and I become a friend in a sense, right? Yeah. And so I think, that you don't have to be a therapist to do. No. And that's the bulk of it. Yeah. Right? I mean, there are therapeutic models that we use, but the bulk of it is that connection.
Yeah, I think the bulk of it is bearing the burdens of those with them.
Yeah.
Right?
So how does that translate to friendship? Well, because that's a tough part of friendship sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be emotionally mature enough to just be there with the person. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. Because a lot of times when things are really, really tough and traumatic, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
If your friend's parent dies, when my mom
you
died,
want to so bad because you care so much, right?
Yeah. When my mom passed away, over a year or so ago, it was interesting to see how some of my friends reacted. All of my good friends, expressed condolences or reached out, but it was interesting how some of them wanted to just spend time with me and I could just say or feel and they were totally comfortable, and other friends were like, hey, how are you doing, it's good to see you, and would talk, but they if I kind of went to that place, I could tell they're like, I don't want to be
I wasn't good. I just kept making mom jokes. I was so insensitive, I kept forgetting and it just wasn't helpful.
It was perfect. Research shows that good friendships keep you young.
Which I think goes right into the health. There's a lot of health research on connection, on the hormones that are released, right? Yeah. When we're connecting, and even, friendship can lower stress levels. It definitely can raise stress levels depending on how that friendship is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good one if it's unhealthy, or, unfortunately sometimes friendships can become one-sided. Yeah. Where some folks are maybe just having a hard time in their life or a personality type that are more narcissistic or selfish, and and you feel like you're just giving all the time. There's a client that I'm working with, and one of the client's difficulties is that they feel like they constantly seem to end up in friendships where they feel like they don't reciprocate, where they'll be there there to support, but for whatever reasons they can't seem to. And one of the things that this client and I were talking about is, I asked the client about, well, how much are you open? Do you ask? Do you share things that are hard? Or are you always presenting like you've got things together? And as this client reflected, they were like, oh, I wonder, you know.
Yeah, the vulnerability can be tough sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And being able to be vulnerable might open up that friendship. And sometimes, sometimes friendships maybe just need a break or a pause. I mean, there's lots of things going on, but I think it's really interesting.
I don't know if this podcast is going to be able to keep going on a regular basis.
Yeah. We'll see.
Need a pause.
We'll see. we'll have Christmas.
It's getting a little
coming
intense.
Up, right? We need a little break.
Christmas break. Right?
But I think it's interesting when you look at kind of research on what stress does to the body, and how, kind of the opposite of connection and friendship, what that does to the body, and how stress tears it down.
It's way worse.
Yeah, and friendship and connection heals.
It's really
and it's really cool. And so I guess we're getting in kind of like the holistic type sense of our work. I mean, of course we go into pharmacology and all that thing, but all those different things. But there is a great power in some of these holistic methods of, connection, of eating healthy, exercise.
Well, that's the thing that I've appreciated more and more as I've, been doing therapy for a while. It's like, I want to think that the talk, can really turn things around. And there are times and places in people's lives where the talking can open up an avenue, or the processing through trauma and confronting it in that space. But there are a ton of other factors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you've got to have good sleep. If you're not getting sleep, you're not going to be okay. If you don't have any connections, you're not going to be okay. If you're not eating well, you're not going to be okay.
And the tough thing, right, is it's cyclical, or it really plays into it itself, where if I'm feeling stressed, for me, my sleep starts to struggle, or my diet starts to fail.
Yeah, that's really
right.
Yeah, it's like it becomes this compounding difficulty of factors.
Maybe my diet doesn't fail, but I decide to choose
to
eat foods that don't really help me with my overall health.
Right.
And so then, of course, I get more stressed and I feel more down, and then it cycles. And breaking that cycle can really be tough.
Yeah, it sure
can be hard. And I think friendship is a way out of that. I know that when I've been struggling, connecting with someone, having a friend there, whether it be my spouse or whether it be a good friend, can really help me.
Well, I need to get I need to get out of the house. Like if I'm not doing well,
getting out of the house
I need to
huge.
get out. I need to go out into the world. I think that's the aspect of it, is like that novelty, right? I mean, like you've got to be challenged. It can't. I mean, people. So many times, people. One of the the themes of people coming into counseling is I'm stuck. I'm stuck. And so, one of my biggest theories of change is, and it might be overly simplistic, is like, you got to just do something different. Like whatever it is, like you got to just try. And the thing that's really interesting when people are really struggling is they really think that there's only one way, or there's no other way. And if I have any talent or gift, it's the opportunity to see 300 different things you could do with the situation. And they're not always good ideas or the right thing to do, but it's just this notion of possibility, right?
I think that helps in our work role too, to see other options and to pose those. Not that we're saying you need to do this, but we can, like, I agree with you. Coming up with different options is really helpful.
Do it.
Yeah. Speaking to your getting outside, for 6 years, I transferred out to Chicago, so to Illinois, and I was at the office there. And
you loved it.
And I actually,
did you hang out at the Bean?
Summer, fall? We went to the. I think we went to the Bean once. Heather will have to remind me. I know I've seen millions of pictures of it. I know I've been there. I don't know if I actually went up and got a picture, or if I went up and looked at it real close. But I know we've been to. What is that park? Is it Millennium Park or something like that? But I can't remember. People from Chicago are gonna be like, "Well, you never went to Chicago. What are you talking about?"
Not a Chicagoan.
Yeah. But anyway,
they're serious about their Blackhawks too. I'll tell you that.
The Blackhawks, the Bulls. Well, actually, it depends on what side, right? For baseball. So if you're South side, then typically White Sox, and then kind of anywhere else, I guess, is Cubs. But I won't take sides. They're both great. So we went to Chicago for 6 years, and the springs and summers were great. Fall was okay. Winter was really tough. I I grew up in the desert. I like the heat.
So bizarre.
And it's so cold. It's so
Such a
cold in
weirdo.
Chicago. Now, the thing that's really interesting is Chicago gets dark. Like I feel like the sun goes away for so long, and it was really, really hard for me. And so just speaking to what you're talking about, like getting outside,
seasonal affect.
for me, I had to be outside even more. And one thing, I'm just going to mention this, one thing that really helped for me in that office, for a while I was in just this tiny brick office. We didn't even have a window, but I got a mood light. Have you ever heard of a mood light or a happy light?
I have. I've heard people talk about them, but I haven't done any research.
Man, it made a huge difference for me. Yes.
And I don't know if it's thought of those as a little like, really? You turn on a light and you're like baking?
Really, John? Really? Well, and that's my thought is maybe it's because of kind of what I was used to. I'm used to sun. I'm used to heat. Now, it doesn't give you vitamin D. It just simulates the light, right? But I felt more energized. I felt more focused. It made me feel happier. And so
the placebo effect, maybe.
It could be placebo effect, but even if it is, it was worth the $40 light.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take 40.
I'll take
and
placebo
every
all
winter
day.
I would use it, especially when we have a lot of dark time. So I wanted to throw that into your getting outside. So for me, getting outside is a huge thing. Just fresh air.
Yeah, fresh air is huge.
Man, it makes such a huge difference.
I've noticed that if I don't get 4 days a week at least of outsideness, that I can notice, especially and that becomes harder in the winter months, right? Because it's tougher to get outside and go for a run or whatever when it's colder. And so, I've really noticed that if I don't get outside more days than not doing something for myself physical, I really am not doing good.
And a break from life, right? A break, like a break. For me, going to the beach heals a ton.
I love the beach. We, my son, before he took off on this journey that he's on, we went with another friend. We hooked up and we went out to, I can't remember. It was off the southeast of North Carolina. There's these 2 islands that I'm forgetting the name of that you can camp. Like you can go camp on the islands. You take this ferry over, and one of the islands has horses on it, like these wild horses. Which I was like, how do wild horses survive on this?
Is it like a tiny? Oh, it's tiny.
Yeah, it's tiny. Like where's the fresh water for the horses? Like. And they like swim in the ocean. It's crazy.
I wonder if there could be like a spring that comes up.
I don't know. I remember asking the locals, and they were like, "Oh yeah, where do they get water?" Maybe they've developed tolerance for salty-ish water, like
brackish water.
Yeah, brackish water or something like that. But anyway, so we went on to this other island, and we walked down to the very end, or we actually got a ride down to the very end, and this random guy picked us up in a Jeep or something, and we camped out, and man, just being under the constant sound and roar of the ocean,
that was wonderful.
It was great. Now it was very difficult to manage sand in a tent.
Yeah.
You just had to accept that you are going to be covered in sand.
Yeah.
And so once we kind of got that, it was like, okay. But just being able to just constantly hear the roar of the wind and the ocean, because it's like out this, like at this peninsula. Gosh, it was really, really cool.
It is. There's something about the beach. I could just go sit.
I like the beach. I
took us off track.
House.
You were talking about health benefits.
Oh, it's okay.
Did we get through
it's all right.
Or did
yeah,
I
for the most part. The other one, like they mentioned, there's reduced levels of dementia. There's longer life. They're talking about those kinds of health benefits.
It's crazy.
Which, again, I think it's all a part of those chemicals that got released. But I had a Goonies back question. Do you remember in the story? I was confused in the scene, and maybe you're not going to have an answer, but I was confused by the scene where Mikey is like has this reverence for One-Eyed Willie. When he's the first
like towards
one
the
in.
end.
Yeah, he first gets broken into the lair, and he's discovered all the gold. I don't remember the lines.
He gets
per se.
emotional. And
yeah,
I don't
what is that?
remember-
Like, what is that about? Was it just that? What do you think they were trying to communicate there, or what do you think the metaphor there is?
I don't remember the lines, and I remember something happened when we were watching that scene last night, to where I didn't pay attention to what he was saying, and I just kind of got it when he was emotional and they walked in. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he may. But I wonder if it has something to do with. I could be way off here, and TV or movie people correct us, but I wondered if it was emotional because it symbolized for him
the fulfillment.
Yeah,
maybe,
like the end
that they'd accomplish, like, here it is.
to this journey. But also I wonder, did he maybe start to realize at that point, and he said something when they walked in that made me might kind of think this, did he start to realize at that point that, hey, you guys are what matter to me? Like, you being with me is
Yeah, I wondered
what
if it was
matters.
this notion of like One-Eyed Willie was maybe the first Goonie, right? Because the word Goonie is this idea of
Yeah,
like somebody that
misfit
misfit,
type.
outsider. You know,
Outsider,
he's
that's
kind
good.
of like a Robin Hood figure too, right? I'm sure he's like stole from the rich or whatever. And so it's kind of like he's inducted or connected with the history of the Goonie, or the first Goonie, or the original Goonie, you know, because of the whole pirate.
That could be it. We really, and if we were better prepared, we probably should watch that scene again.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I just didn't think about it because I noticed it last night, and I wasn't quite sure, and I was just curious if it hit you that way because
I remember.
I was like, did I miss it?
remember
Like, what is going on?
when they walked in, he said something. I remember that kind of hitting me, but I can't remember what he said.
When he walks in for the first time.
So when they walk in
all
and they
the
see
friends.
him emotional, there's a dialogue that happens.
Oh, I think
at
that he
moment.
says like, "How long have you guys been there?"
Yeah, and what
they're
did they-
like long enough. They said long enough.
So long enough.
Maybe just to hear the tribute, maybe.
Yeah, long enough to feel the connection or something. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel like
And then
maybe
you
it
had
was just
Sloth
end of
diving
something.
down
Yeah.
the sail with Chunk on his back. I thought it was pretty vicious that that Mama, Fratelli,
care, man,
like
yeah.
threw that. She just threw her to the winds, man. Tied
Yep.
up, walked up.
Yep. She didn't care.
Care one
Well,
bit.
she didn't. I don't know if she.
Rocky,
She has an interesting sense of love for her own children.
Yeah, she's pretty abusive. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's a whole episode right
I
there.
know, right? It really could be the an example of a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
The brothers. You were always the favorite one. She's like, that's right. You're pathetic and a loser. Oh, that's great. Anything else strike you from the movie? I think one of the other things that really struck me is, the notion of journey and kind of gaining something, coming back with the treasure. It's fantastic at the end that Mikey, throws away the inhaler. It's this kind of type of, the sickly, weak, kid with the, of course, stronger, athletic Thanos brother. And and he throws it kind of away at the end. After I think he threw it away too, like somewhere that had with the girl, give him like a kiss on the cheek again. Like
I think
you're really gonna give those ladies a run for their money when they get older. Which was another fantastic. I definitely as a kid loved the fact that like he made out with this older hot girl. It was a rite of
Unknowingly,
passage.
right? She didn't know, but
Watch out! There was a hole back here. Brand must have been standing in it. I didn't know he had braces. And her friend's like, right, next time you should kiss with your eyes open. It's a whole different experience. Such a great line.
I think it's awesome.
It's so funny. I think that's one thing that's also timeless about it. It's like this rite of passage.
Yes.
Your first kiss.
Yes, I think there's so many things about the movie that really are classic, and yeah, I think that with the ending, kind of going back to what we were speaking about earlier, it really, as a kid, meant something different to me than it does now as an adult. As a kid, I was
What's
just
changed?
like, dude, get the money.
Right, that's what I
Get the
said. Like I
treasure.
was just
What the
totally
heck?
fixated on how can you let the boat go?
But as an adult, I see the family like so happy, because it's really interesting. Throughout the movie, you don't really get an impression of anyone's family. It just kind of seems
Besides
like
mom. Well, besides
and I think Mouth don't you have an interaction like with him and maybe his mom or something at the very beginning? I can't remember. But you don't really get a sense.
it's Mouth with his dad
is it
doing
his dad?
plumbing work, right? Where he's like,
That's
look at it, and he
right.
gets squirted in the face or
That's
whatever.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So there is a part with Mouth, and his dad's a plumber.
And then you don't really get a sense. I mean, you get a real quick snapshot of Mikey and Brand's dad as they go past the museum, and he's like
it's
waving.
kind of this nerdy guy.
But I think
the other
ending-
thing, thing that's cool about Mikey and Brand is there's this, after the yuppie villains come, wanting the contract signed, how they have this moment on the porch, you know what I mean? That is tenderness, but then also the big brother kind of dragging him along, a headlock or whatever, which is a little bit a dimension that was, somewhat existed in my, I have an older brother that's 5 years older than me. And so, there's a tender aspect of that.
I love how they portray that relationship where it seems like a sibling relationship, but then you can tell there's love there.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's very cool.
I think for the ending for me, I think is different as an adult because I noticed the family dynamics. Like you were saying, there's similarities.
Right.
You kind of see why they are the way they are. And then I love how it's the friendship. Right? It's the connection. It's the family. That's what is the treasure. And as an adult, I see that. Whereas as a kid, like I said, it's like, dude, I want the freaking boat. Yeah.
Get the doubloons. I could totally have an awesome bike if I had those
like all you got are a couple jewels. Like there's a whole treasure.
I could get a BMX. Did you ever see that movie when you were a kid? Did you see Rad?
Oh, is that the one with Nicole Kidman?
No, it's not Nicole Kidman. She's not
I saw that I think had Nicole Kidman in. I mean, she wasn't the main character.
No.
But it was a BMX movie.
With Nicole Kidman?
Yeah, she just plays like a small role. I swear. I could be thinking of the wrong actress, but it's a famous actor.
Rad is like, like the BMX guys like come to town and he's like the local paper boy on his bike, and he and the thing that's hilarious about that movie and how like dated it is like the big trick he pulls off to like cut through the course to win is a backflip on his bike.
I swear I've seen that, but I can't.
It's the best.
I can't remember.
The scene that's just absolutely fantastic, not to take us into another, is like where they're like dancing on the like dance floor with their bikes.
I don't remember.
There's a slow dance of like the love interest and like the local paperboy guy, and they like slow dance like they're
I don't remember
swanning around on their bikes. It's really fantastic. It's so great. Oh, it's so funny. Anyway, sorry.
Well, yeah, I got stuck. I think Goonies was great. I think friendship is so important. I think that there are many things in friendship, and I think there's different types of friendships that we consider, and I hope that our discussion was enlightening to some degree. And if it wasn't, it was just fun.
It was just fun to go down the memory lane of Goonies. Was. Hey, suggest some movies. Yeah. What do you want us to talk about? Or if there are movies that really strike you with motifs that would be cool to talk about.
It is.
That's Friendship, Goonies.
It was a fun one.
Hey, you guys. Hey. Rocky Road.